Okay, I guess we can start the press conference. Good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to this press conference. We had today the 46th General Assembly of the European Leagues that was kindly hosted by the Czech League, that is an honorary member of our organization. And in just a few minutes, I will give the floor to the president of the league, Dusan Svoboda. We had a high attendance of all our members. All the major stakeholders in European football were also present, and together now with the chair of the General Assembly, Klaus Thompson, and together also with my colleague, Jakob of the European League's administration, we will go through the main outcome of the meeting, and mainly we will cover two subjects. Of course, today has been an important moment for the organization with the approval of our position when you come to the upcoming cycle of UCC when it comes to the revenue distribution model, and also Klaus Thompson, the chair, will also explain the declaration in support of the European football pyramid that has been unanimously approved by all member leagues with the support of all the stakeholders. So first, I will give you the floor to Dusan Svoboda. Just from a logistic information, the president of the Czech League will speak in Czech. For those that are connected on Zoom, as you might be used, there is the symbol of interpretation. Then please click on the English button. So, Mr. Svoboda, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Já vás tady všechny vítám nejenom jménem svým, ale jménem Ligové fotbalové asociace. Já bych chtěl říct na začátek jenom pár věcí. Pro nás vlastně to bylo hodně důležité, že jsme dostali to pořadatelství vlastně toho General Assembly do Prahy, protože nevím, jestli víte, nebo ne všichni asi ví, ale vlastně letošní sezóna je 30. jubilejní sezóna v historii vlastně samostatné české ligy, a my jsme vlastně to pozvání a tu možnost uspořádat tady General Assembly vlastně vzali jako určitou součást vlastně té výroční sezóny. A myslím si, že za sebe, když můžu to valné shromáždění zhodnotit, tak si myslím, že proběhlo velmi úspěšně, a myslím si, že je hrozně důležité pro takové soutěže, no, pro ligy velikosti Fortuna ligy nebo pro český profesionální fotbal první, druhou ligu, je strašně důležité být součástí vlastně té organizace, protože víme, že v poslední době, v posledních letech dochází k určitým snahám v evropském fotbale nastolit určitou disbalanci ve prospěch zejména velkých klubů. Narážím na snahy o vznik superligy. Vidíme, že vlastně to by znamenalo pro evropský fotbal zásadní problém. Já říkám možná trochu nadneseně, že by to byl začátek konce rozvoje fotbalu, tak jak ho známe. Myslím si, že fotbal je nejdynamičtěji se rozvíjející sport vlastně na světě, a myslím si, že za to může, nebo je to právě díky tomu, že je právě nastaven v tom schématu, v jakém je, na principu solidarity a spolupráce těch jednotlivých účastníků, a na tom, že vlastně ty silné a bohaté ligy a silné a bohaté kluby, které vlastně přinášejí tu hodnotu, tak o část té hodnoty jsou připraveni se na tom principu solidarity podělit. A já se obávám, že vznikem Superligy by tady došlo k tomu výraznému narušení. Já jsem rád, že právě European League jsou platformou a důležitou platformou, která může ty zájmy hájit. A říkám, pro ligy, jako je Česká liga, malé střední ligy, je to prostě otázka otázka zcela zásadní a principiální, takže jsem rád, že se to vlastně i setkalo vlastně s tím termínem, nebo to téma, že se setkali vlastně s tím termínem konání General Assembly tady v Praze, protože říkám, považuji to za hodně zásadní a já doufám, že se nám všem společně podaří ty hodnoty, na kterých zejména evropský fotbal vzniknul a který vlastně přinesl fotbal v té podobě, jak ho známe dneska, tak já pevně věřím, že se nám to podaří v úvozovkách ubránit. Takže to si myslím, že to je asi z mé strany všechno. Já samozřejmě doufám, že i kolegové z European Leagues a z těch ostatních našich hosté, kteří tady byli, tak snad byli s námi, s naším pořadatelstvím spokojení. Vy víte, že Ligová fotbalová asociace je relativně mladá organizace a toto byl vlastně první takový významný event, který jsme hostili, tak doufám, že jsme to dobře zvládli. Takže to je za mě asi všechno. Děkuji.
Thank you, President. And I would like to give the floor now to Klaus Thomsen, that is the chair of our General Assembly.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Swoboda, for hosting this event. I couldn't imagine a more professional way of receiving all the domestic football leagues in Europe. So thank you very much. Congratulations on your 30 years anniversary. But turning to this session, what Mr. Swoboda said of most importance is the words that Mr. Swoboda used on behalf of Ligová, fotbalová asociace, the Czech football league, on the football pyramid and the importance of that. And that is the first part, I think, of the outcome of the General Assembly we've had today in the European leagues, is the joint declaration on the European Football League. And please take note that this is a joint declaration. It's a declaration by the European League. It's a declaration of Football Supporters Europe. It's a declaration of FIFPro Europe. It's a declaration of ECA, and it's a declaration of UEFA. Now, the football pyramid is not an administrative construct. The football pyramid is the football model in Europe and a European sports model. And it's the model that ensures that football is so much more than commercial interests, so much more than consumer interests. We do not deny that that is part of professional football, but football in Europe is a pertaining culture in all countries. It's a community asset. It's something that creates formal and informal communities. It's something that young people can build identities around. It's something you can join and have pleasure in your life, but also learn important lessons for your life. Now, we need to protect that, and that's what the football pyramids ensures. And the more specifics of that is that we should always have open competitions with promotion and relegation at national championship level. That the European club competitions we build on top of that is rooted in the sporting merit from domestic competitions, that is where you qualify. That there is a fair and balanced system of solidarity that aims to support the development on the sport at lower levels. Because the unique thing is that the lower levels are helping create the values that are at the absolute top levels and will culminate later in this season. And that's a very important point. And it's not just a point about who's delivering. It's the point about that's why it's a community and a culture. So that also takes a structure of good governance and dialogue where all the stakeholders are invited, and we should take care, and all the parts of this declaration, I agree that we should take care of that. So we need the continuous dialogue. And therefore the governing bodies in Europe have their formal structures, but they should always also meaningfully and fairly balance the interests of the legitimate parties. When we're talking small and medium-sized clubs that are not participating in the competitions, when we're talking that the leagues are not members of UEFA, then the leagues and UEFA do honor this. You know, we've made a commitment to all that we will incorporate this in the way we conduct ourselves. And we had the privilege today also, besides Mr. Swoboda, that Peter Fusak was here, the president of Czech football, of the National Association. He's also a member of the UEFA Exco. And Mr. Fusak also stressed the importance of the league and the collaboration with the Czech Football League. And I think that's a very important point he made there. So those would be my words on that declaration. Before I will give the floor to Jaco to say something about the revenue distribution system from the European club competitions and our view on that, I will mention something else that we cannot forget, which is not just about league football. The Ukrainian league was not present at our General Assembly. They're a member. They're not present because they live every day under conditions none of us can imagine. And even so, the Ukrainian league stages and executes the football tournament in UEFA. And we are proud of our Ukrainian members and what they do for football and for us all. So I wanted to say that we need to remember that. But Jaco, I will hand it to you to give a few words on the revenue distribution system.
Thank you, Klaus. And also thank you, Dusan, for your nice words in the beginning. And also let me express my congratulations to you, to Thomas and his team, not only for the fantastic way you hosted these events today and yesterday and the day before, but also to your 30th anniversary. And if I look at the Fortuna Liga, I think it's just a fantastic example of one of the members and one of the leagues we represent. You have an exciting competition model where you have 16 teams playing in the top tier, where you have a round robin, so after 30 matches, and then you will conclude and continue in the playoff rounds for the championship, for UCC spots, and also for promotion and relegation. So your league and the way you have structured your competition is, I think, fulfilling more or less everything what has been expressed by Klaus regarding the joint statement or the joint declaration we agreed on, we signed on today. You're also a perfect example of a country where we see a lot of impact of the UEFA club competitions on especially the financial balances between the clubs in your countries. And this has always been and will always be a very important strategic topic on the agenda of all our members. And we have discussed revenue distribution very much in detail, and we have presented our position and our process to all our members. And I'm very happy to say that the vast majority of our members endorsed everything we presented. So that was a really proof that we are on the right track, also in constructive talks with UEFA about that. They were in the room today, like the other stakeholders. And what we have discussed on the content in this matter is what we see, there is going to be a new development in UEFA club competitions after this cycle, and this cycle ends after the season 23-24. So the new cycle starts after 24, in July 24. There will be more teams participating, clubs participating in the competitions. So today there are 96, and this will grow to 108, which is in fact good, because we always advocate to have more clubs coming from more different countries, to have the opportunity to also qualify for UEFA club competitions. That's one thing, what will happen. There will be more dates included in the calendar, because UEFA has decided to change their model, which is quite innovative in fact, to change their model from a traditional group stage model to a league stage model. So 4 more dates will be included, what will be challenging for all the domestic competitions, including the Czech League. Because these dates, you maybe don't want to seek and have the competition between your own domestic matches and international club competitions. And definitely UEFA doesn't want you to seek for the competition. And finally, and what is maybe most driving also the total revenues, is the fact that the number of matches will increase, especially the number of matches within Champions League, which is by far the biggest competition, especially also from a commercial point of view. 50% more matches after 2024, from 125 in the current competition model to 189 in the next competition model. This will all result in the fact that we expect, and we don't expect it because we had we think that this will be the case, but this is based on all the information we receive from UEFA, from ECA, from others, from media specialists, that the total revenues will increase from the current 3.6 billion euros on an annual base to about 4.8 billion on an annual base. And today, in the current cycle, the revenue distribution model is based as follows. 75% of the 3.6 billion is distributed amongst the 96 clubs participating in UEFA club competitions, resulting in that in average, and there are big differences between the averages and also between the clubs, but in average, a club participating in Champions League receives 62 million, a little bit more, in the current cycle, and one of the clubs participating in either the Europa League or the Europa Conference League, they receive in total about 11 million. If you compare this to the total amount, what is used for the non-participating clubs, all those clubs who perform in all the competitions all across Europe on top-tier level, today there are more than 650 non-participating clubs on top-tier level. Only 175 million money maximum is distributed to all these clubs, which means in average about 250,000 euros. We believe, so that's the analysis of the current situation. We know that the revenues are going to increase. We think that it is fair and balanced to ask for a share of 10% for the non-participating clubs, which means more or less doubling the percentage of the money which is shared out of the total revenues to the non-participating clubs. Today it's up to 5%. We think 10% would be a good and fair share. Expecting the expectations I informed you about before, 4.8 billion, it means 480 million will be used for the non-participating clubs. But we very much acknowledge that the participants in UCC, Champions League, Europa League and Conference League, that they deliver the value. So we cannot say all the revenues, all the additional revenues should go to the non-participants. We think in our proposal, today 2.7 billion is shared to the participants. That will grow to about 3.5 billion, while today up to 175 million is distributed to the non-participants, and that will grow to 480 million. To end with the averages, Today, in average, a Champions League participant receives 62. That will grow in our proposal to 72. Today, a participant in one of the other two competitions receives, in average, 11 million. That will grow to 12.5 million. And today, in average, and also there are big differences, a non-participating club on the top tier level receives 250,000 euro. So compare that to the 11 or the 62 million. We, in our proposal, think that should grow to more than 750,000. So, yes, these are the basics. I can imagine you have some questions, especially on the joint declaration, but also on this topic. But these would be my opening words, Alberto.
Thank you to Klaus Thomsen. Thank you to Jaakko. I think it's the time to open the floor for question. We have several media in the room here in Prague and some other online. So we will play a bit ping pong between the two. We start here with Jamie Gardner for the English Press Association. Jamie.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Question on the distribution. If 10% goes to non-participating clubs, whose percentage comes down in the European League's view? Because obviously someone has to reduce if the NPC distribution goes up. And then a wider question, going back a few weeks to the statement on the Club World Cup. How big a threat is that competition to domestic leagues and their calendar? And what does European leagues intend to do about it?
Maybe I can answer your first question, and I think that Klaus and those in their capacity of running leagues are in a better position to answer the second one. But who's going down? In our proposal today, 75% is shared amongst the participants. In our proposal, that will be reduced to 73% in round figures. The other thing, what will go down, but I don't know the exact percentage, to be frank, is that the competition costs will not grow. They will grow, but they will not grow, let's say, in the same percentage. And so that's the main difference. But it's also stating that we do not foresee a reduction in percentages for the participant, let's say from currently 75% to 65% or to whatever percentage. We really acknowledge the fact that the clubs deliver the value as it is in domestic competitions, but at the same time, it must be very clear that UEFA club competitions are built on the values coming from all the domestic competitions across Europe, and that they are fully and only composed out of clubs playing in those competitions. On the second question, Klaus, I hope you still can remember and that you can answer.
The second question was the Club World Cup. I'll just make a brief remark on the revenue distribution, because I think it needs saying. The European club competitions is a fantastic asset to European football and European club football. Let's remember that. And, you know, UEFA should be proud of that. And what we have here is not a negative process. It's actually a very positive process. That we now have dialogue on the revenue distribution, and for that to change things. And things like payments for non-participating clubs will change things, because smaller clubs are much better euro per euro, pound per pound, or krona per krona to achieve results with means and bite the big ones in the heels. No one has any illusions that there won't be big clubs. So it's very important. And what we have here is a process where the European club competitions can become, you know, have the opportunity of becoming all that they can be for European club football. So we should all take that. And I think it's good, you know, it makes good sense when we see the common declaration as well. Then back to the Club World Cup. First of all, the World League Forum is a sister organization, the global sister organization to the European leagues. So we fully support the effort made by the World League Forum, first and foremost. I think the World League Forum stated, and I very much agree, that the world do not need more club competitions or more competitions in the international matchday calendar. It is detrimental because there is no room. It's not good for the players. It creates little value in the markets. It takes value out of the markets where common commercial deals are done domestically. If you need to pay for a new tournament, then it takes money away from another tournament. I haven't heard that the media companies have had rising income lately. I've heard the opposite. So it's no good. Also because that's them. There is a. There's a more even distribution to all clubs on domestic level. Now, what I think FIFA should seriously consider is how to invest in league development outside Europe. I think that would be fantastic. That is where we need more football competitions. That is to strengthen football because we know what football can do. So I would say that's where it is. What the Club World Cup is of threats to individual league is very different from league to league. It's a different. The Danish league doesn't need to be particularly worried if we're gonna miss out on some of our teams because they're going to the Club World Cup. It would be a rare occasion, I'm afraid. Don't tell my clubs. But whereas that's a different story for someone else. But it is a new thing in the market, and we do not need those. We need to make everything sustainable. We do not need endless growth. We need sustainability and to protect the culture and the communities around football.
Thank you. We go now to this gentleman on the left before going to some question from media online. If you can please introduce yourself and the media organization you're working with, please.
Petr Havlík, ČTK. Já bych měl dotaz na pana Svobodu. Jaký měl kongres přínos konkrétně pro český fotbal? Jaký jsou nějaké konkrétní věci, výstupy z toho pro nás?
Tak tady se nedá říct, že by z toho dvoudenního kongresu byl... Se nedá říct, že by tady z toho byl nějaký konkrétní jeden nebo dva závěry, ale spíš jde o to, že opravdu můžeme nějakým způsobem prostě přispět, já nevím, jak to správně říct, k vytváření určitého tlaku, stát se součástí určitého tlaku směrem k těm dalším autoritám fotbalovým a k těm účastníkům vlastně toho fotbalového dění, směrem k tomu, aby opravdu byl braný zřetel a byly akcentovány ty potřeby těch malých a středně velkých lig. Samozřejmě, když se tady bavíme, jedno z těch velkých témat je vlastně změna nebo návrh na změnu distribuce vlastně těch finančních prostředků, tak to samozřejmě v reálích české nejvyšší soutěže, kterou vy samozřejmě si dovedete představit, tak pro české kluby, když by vlastně jakoby ty neúčastníci těch soutěží dostali na sezónu o několik set tisíc euro více, tak jsou to pro ně už signifikantní peníze, takže to je samozřejmě pro nás důležité a o té problematice směrem k Superlize, což já vnímám jako opravdu velké nebezpečí, tak o tom jsem tady mluvil. Já si myslím, že a tady se zase trošku budu narážet na trošku specifickou situaci v České republice, kterou my ale dobře známe a my víme, že v Čechách máme dva silné sporty. Jeden je fotbal a ten druhý je hokej, který možná v celé řadě zemí tak významný není, ale myslím si, že zrovna my tady můžeme vědět, co se stane v okamžiku, kdy máte nějakou jednu silnou ligu, která je vlastně mimo ty hokejové struktury. Víme, jak vypadá problematika s uvolňováním hráčů, třeba s NHL pro potřeby národního mužstva. Takže my tu situaci známe, umíme si ji dobře představit a já mám opravdu velkou obavu, že by za pár let něco podobného, kdyby k Superlize došlo, by mohlo právě vzniknout i ve fotbale. Takže myslím si, že to jsou takové asi dva momenty, ale říkám, není to o tom, že by tady byl přijatý nějaký konkrétní závěr pro Fortuna ligu.
Thank you, President. We switch to online. And Khaled Nahar from Sporthau, the floor is yours. Good afternoon, Khaled.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
I have a question. The demand that the share for the non-participating clubs should be risen, that is something probably everybody knows that this is a demand of the European League. So UEFA will not probably heard about it for the very first time. Is there any kind of reaction so far? How's the process? Is there, can you say something about it? How are the chances to succeed with it?
Thank you, Gillette, for your question from Germany. What I can say is that we take this topic, first of all, very seriously from the European leagues. And we also, until now, we believe that we are in a very constructive and good dialogue between UEFA and ourselves. We also understand that at the end of the process, a decision is going to be made by the UEFA Executive Committee, the ultimate decision-making body within UEFA. Therefore, it was also very nice that the president of the Czech FA was our guest today, and that he also attended the official dinner yesterday, and that he expressed also his, let's say, cooperation and intention for cooperation with the European leagues as an association, because he's also one of the UEFA Executive Board members. We also do know that, of course, the clubs represented at ECA are quite influential, to say it frankly, in the processes, in all the processes regarding UEFA club competitions between themselves and UEFA. At the same time, we also see that the other stakeholders, represented by the fans, Football Supporters Europe, FIFPro, UEC, that they are very much aligned in general terms, maybe not on every detail, but in general terms on the position of the European leagues. So we strongly believe that, I mean, we are not fighting this battle to harm any of the participants. We are fighting and we are trying to convince UEFA to take the right decision in the interest of the entire ecosystem of all professional football clubs in Europe. And this is also the responsibility we are calling them up to, that they are not only competition organizer, they are also the governing body in European football. So we cannot guarantee anything, but we are very hopeful.
Thank you. Jaco, we stay online with Martin Lipton from The Sun. Martin, floor is yours.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for taking the question. Two parts, really, if I may. You mentioned in that last answer, Jaco, the ECA position, and I think we pretty much know that they're not willing at the moment to give up more ground in solidarity, it seems. They are prepared to discuss changes to the distribution model, but it doesn't seem they want to go anything above the percentile that they claim is 7%. You say less than that at the moment. If they're intransigent, unwilling to bend, how can you persuade UEFA not to listen to them? And the second one, you did mention the UEC, which obviously has its inaugural meeting on Monday. How important an organisation do you think that can be? Do you think it will be a genuine representative of the small and medium clubs and have a voice? Or because the ECA has the mandate to negotiate with UEFA and FIFA over things, will that voice simply be ignored?
Thank you for the question. Klaus will make a few comments first.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think on the UEC, I think without offending the UEC, I would say it's a development project still. We have very great sympathy for giving the smaller and medium-sized clubs a stronger voice. We have a very strong alignment with the UEC. So I think our messages will be very similar. We, as European leagues, do our utmost to give a voice to the smaller and medium-sized clubs as well. So we welcome the UEC, and we hope that it will be an important organization in giving a voice and providing value. And the thing about ECA giving up on, I think right now this is a dialogue. And it's true, if you're sort of like on the receiving end, you'd like to maximize your income, and we've had COVID and all the rest of it, so there's a lack of income out there. But it's also, but if there is a rise in income, I think there is, there are a foundation for a very positive dialogue and how to sustain the system. And I would think that ECA also want to take a long-term perspective on it. And the long-term perspective is, the better the domestic leagues, the better the European club competitions. It's a banal thing to say, but it's the simple mechanism. So I think there will be grounds for dialogue. And then I think we should also remember that the members of UEFA are the national associations. The national associations are, in most countries, the owners of the domestic competitions that are then taken care of by the leagues. So we do have a very direct relationship in that sense as well, and very good dialogue with the national associations. And I think that is a very important element in this discussion, which is still a positive discussion on how the European club competitions can be all they can be for European football. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is there any additional question? Yes, Jamie. First row here, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one more on the solidarity money. The release talks pointedly about allocation to professional clubs. Would you like UEFA to kind of enshrine that? Because at the moment, I suppose it is at the discretion of FAs where that solidarity money goes. Is it vital that they almost spell out that it is top-flight professional clubs not participating in Europe where that 10% goes?
Yes, it is. There are nuances to that discussion. It's a lot about protecting the competitive balance. And if it's about protecting the competitive balance, the funds must end up with the non-participating clubs. And I would say you know, it's nice to use the phrase solidarity. The phrase compensation is more appropriate because it is a compensation for the value delivered. As Jaco said, you know, the UCCs build on values created by all domestic competitions, also by those who do not participate. And therefore, it's fair that they're compensated for the value they deliver. So yes, that is essential. The nuances being that in many countries, big and small countries, there are agreements, but they are in agreements with the professional clubs on the top flight, that part of these funds are used to sustain, for instance, second-tier clubs, professional clubs in second tier. This is very useful, also for the clubs in the top flight, because this is part of keeping the domestic system sound and competitive. There's another thing which I find is important, and also if we have a rise in compensation for the non-participating clubs, I think it's perfectly fair to then have a discussion on where should these funds be allocated. I think it could never be a question that it's in the professional football clubs in the top flight or what they decide, but it's very fair to have a conversation on should this go to talent development, should we earmark this to certain activities in professional clubs. And I think this is rather important, because we want these funds to develop competitiveness in the domestic leagues, not be used to increase top flight player salaries. So I think that's a good and responsible discussion to have here. So the basic answer is yes, and that needs to be ensured. And I think actually you take a look in UEFA's regulations, that's what it says. So you know, we do have a dialogue with UEFA on how do we secure this, and it's a good dialogue. But you know, I think there are nuances. You know, what's responsible investments of the money, and also do we want to sustain other than top flight clubs? And I think that's a fair discussion to have on domestic level.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Klaus. I assume we go for the last question, and that is last two questions, actually. Last is from Chalet online again. Chalet, the floor is yours. Then we have a last question here in the room to close the press conference. Chalet.
Yes, thank you. One element I'm interested in is the 10-year coefficient, which we have since 2018. I see you're aiming at the money for the non-participating clubs, but the general distribution system is also benefiting the very big ones. As we see last season, PSG went out at the round of 16, ending up with 92 millions. Bayern in the quarterfinal with 110 millions, and Villarreal made it to the semifinal, but had less money than both of the others with 78 millions. Should this system be challenged, and what voice can have the European leagues with that?
Yes. So, Charlotte, UEFA club competitions, revenue distributions models are quite complicated. We always advocate three objectives. The first one we extensively discussed here today on a higher share for the non-participating clubs. The other two, in general, are always, we think that more money could be allocated to Europa League and Conference League instead of Champions League. And the final thing is that we always advocate that we think within the competition, the money must be distributed more equally instead of based on market pool or coefficient. But we also imagine and we realize that it is complicated and that everything is having its impact somewhere. In the discussion is very much mainly about the influence and the impact of Champions League. But in many countries, in many leagues we represent, that's not the case. I think, take the good example of the Czech Republic, in the competition of the Fortuna Liga, if one of the top teams qualifies, for instance, for the Europa League or for the Conference Leagues and make it to the knockout stages, then they perform sportingly very well, and this is what you would like to see to happen when you're running the league. This is, of course, what you would like to see to happen if you run the club. But at the same time, the money they can make in the Conference League or the Europa League is already having a big impact in the domestic competition situation. So, yes, we are discussing this. We also consider that this is also very much a discussion between the participants. Because if you look at the composition of the group of clubs which are taking, which are part of the discussions with UEFA, these are not only the clubs coming from the big clubs coming from the biggest countries, they are also clubs coming from Finland, from Sweden, from Denmark, from the Netherlands. And everyone, each club, I believe, is looking at this from its own perspective. And that's why they are clubs, because clubs are responsible to win the next match and to achieve the results in the championship they are, the competitions they are performing at. And therefore I also think, we think that in this case, of course, it would be very good if UEFA considers us being co-competition organizers as a more serious partner. So this is a complicated topic. We don't have solutions for everything yet. We also we are not involved in all the detailed discussions on each individual question. For instance, should it be a 5-year, 10-year coefficient? Should it be 10% or 20% or 30% of the total model? We do have an opinion, but we also consider we are not the participants in these competitions.
Thank you. One last question here, and then one very last from Martin again online. So here in the room, please.
Pavel Duseděl, Sport.cz, já bych se zeptal pana Svobody ještě na doplnění, jak vlastně náročné to bylo uspořádat takovou akci v Praze.
Když máte tak skvělý tým spolupracovníků, jak máme na LFA tady u nás my, tak tady ještě bych vlastně chtěl poděkovat Tomáši Bartovi a s Danem Hajným, tak to se pak zdá, že to tak komplikované není, ale jak jsem říkal, byla to pro nás vlastně první akce takového významu, takže možná, až to budeme organizovat po druhé nebo po třetí, tak už na to už budeme víc vědět, co nás čeká, ale myslím si, že nejenom LFA, ale i fotbalová asociace, víte, že budeme organizovat vlastně finále konferenční ligy, takže myslím si, že po té organizační stránce si myslím, že jsme poměrně zdatní a jak jsem slyšel ty reakce vlastně od kolegů, kteří tady sedí se mnou, tak i od těch účastníků, tak si myslím, že s tím byli všichni spokojeni, takže není to nic, co by bylo nějak mimořádně složité pro nás.
Thank you. One very last question of a long, but therefore this means it was an interesting press conference. Martin?
Yeah, hi again. There's been a lot of discussion, obviously, about the ECJ judgment on Super League. Less discussion of the secondary one into the Antwerp case, which appears to show or suggest that the homegrown player rule will have to be rewritten to be in accord with European law. I was wondering if that has been discussed by European leagues, what impact a change, what number you think will be, because they'll have to be club trained to be homegrown from now on if this ruling is confirmed. What impact do you think this will have on the smaller leagues and indeed the bigger leagues in Europe?
Thank you for your good question, but also difficult question, because I would say the honest answer is that we, until now, we have not focused a lot on different cases put forward by the Court of Justice in Luxembourg, and you refer to the Antwerp case. So, yes, you know that we, as European leagues, we have always been very supportive in the fight against the Super League. And you know that one of our leagues actively participated in the legal claims, La Liga. And we also understand that maybe you should look at this in a broader perspective of more different cases which are happening more or less at the same time. But also today at our General Assembly, we have many of the presidents of the different leagues, many of the CEOs, some of the competition managers, maybe some finance directors, some legal experts, but this is not a legal platform. So yes, I'm sure, and we are aware that this is being discussed on a bilateral way between leagues, but it has not been a topic on the agenda of us today. In fact, the Super League, of course, it has been indirectly a topic because we had this joint declaration. And we signed this joint declaration, which is very much referring, of course, to our disagree if a Super League would happen. I hope this more or less answers your question. And otherwise, I hope that I sent you into the woods in a good way for now.
Yes, so just a couple of words to close the press conference. We have just issued on our website and social media platform both the media release, and you will also find the link to the joint declaration unanimously supported by the member leagues of the European leagues and by the professional football stakeholders. And then, just to conclude, for your information, the next General Assembly will take place in Riga on the 26th and 27th of October, hosted by the Latvian League. So thank you very much for your engagement, and the press conference is closed. Good afternoon to all.